Hi, I'm going to tell you her story, my story, in the 1970s of being a gaslight girl. And I'm going to tell you what I learned and see how you can apply that to what you're thinking about in your life today. In the 1970s, I was an art student at the University of Illinois in the bachelor's degree program in art history. In the afternoons, when I finished school, I would take a train and go into the city. I was living in Oak Park, which was about 9 miles from the center of the city of Chicago. And the first day I went to work, I walked into the office. I was supposed to speak to the lady in charge. She was absolutely gorgeous, dressed to the nines, long blonde hair, enormous fingernails. It wasn't popular at that time in that era. And I heard her on the phone saying, "You either do that or I will get you by the balls." And her fingers all came together. And I thought, well, that's a red flag, isn't it? And it continued. So I want to talk to you about that. Now, the Glasslight Club started in 1953. His name was Brown. It was a key club, and it was a predecessor to the Playboy Club. Hugh Hefner got his idea for the Playboy Club from visiting the Glasslight Club. It had been in 3 different locations by the time I came there in 1970. The location was a Palmer House. It was a very not obvious place, but you had to use a key. But they had just said that women could come in too. It used to be only a gentleman's club. But when I started, there were women coming and having dinner too. The interior was lots of pictures of nudes, lots of dancing. It was Charleston. Everything was set in the 1920s. And when I went into the house that was like 3 doors down, that was where we got ready. The idea was to put on your uniform and make sure you're all made up before you go. We had little lockers to keep our makeup in before you go down to the club. The issue was that I was tall and skinny, and I was almost 5'10", and there weren't any costumes that were long enough. You had to work in it, and you had to be able to dance in it. So it was very important that it fit correctly. And she said, "Well, I guess I won't be able to hire you because I don't want to have to make a new costume just for you." And I said, "Well, that's not a problem. If you'll loan me a costume to use as a pattern, I can make it to fit me." And she said, "Oh, okay." And she asked me to weigh. So I went over and stepped on the scale, and she wrote it down. Well, little did I know then is that every single day you came in, the first thing you had to do was face her and weigh. I know, made you feel pretty vulnerable. So I made my costume. The design was like the American flag. It was red, white, and blue. The concept was there were no bones in it. There was nothing in it but fabric. There was the strap came from the front over your arms and around and under your arms. So your arms had to go through it because there was no back at all. The opening to the hip came up over the hip bone, so your entire hip bone was exposed. And there was no more than 1.5 inches of fabric between the top of the hip bone and the back of the back. So the backs came down from the entire back and down to a point. I had I had been working at the University of Illinois as a model anyway for art classes, so I was in good shape. I tried all my life to stay in decent shape, and as a result of that, it was not unusual for me to be looked at as slender, very slender. I did not have big boobs. I'd already I had my daughter, and I didn't have big breasts. But they always gave us lots and lots of nylon stockings to put inside of our costumes because you had to look like you had big breasts. That was a requirement. Because it was cut very low in the front. They were all cut very low in the front and no back. So it was very important that our weight stayed the same. There were very few people who were any older than that. I was just over 30. No, I wasn't. 47, 57, 67. Oh, I was 23, 24, 23. Yeah, that's right. I was 23 years old. And I could dance. I could certainly do the Charleston with no problem at all. I had sung in the choir at church for years, since I was 7 years old. So sing, dance, be able to wait tables, and I was really good at waiting tables. And the maitre d' also was there to teach us anything that we didn't know about waiting tables. So I had that background, so she hired me. So I went to work. I did fine. I mean, I did great with the customers. I enjoyed that part of it. I loved the maitre d'. He was so sweet. She was tough. The lady who ran the place was really tough. She was really, really, really tough. And of course, that was always difficult. My goal was to get a job where I had health care and regular vacations and could progress, could go into a higher level of something. I was taking art in art school because I adored art and I'd always wanted to be an artist. So it wasn't about having a job as an artist, it was that I wanted to be an artist. So I wasn't in the place very long before there became an opportunity for me to apply for a position in the police station. They were, for the first time in the history of the Illinois State Troopers, they had decided to test women. Because of that, I decided to make sure I could pass, and I was too thin. So I went through this period where I had to put on weight and not be fat. It was really tough. So what I was doing was I was just constantly exercising. If I wasn't at work and I was, if I was at home or not in school, and anything I could do, if I dropped my car off at school, I'd take the longest way to the classroom. I was doing whatever I could to make my muscle mass stronger so that I could apply for a position in it was Forest Park at the time that had the first opportunity to test, and then it was the Illinois State Troopers. And so I decided that if I could do Forest Park and pass, because it was the first time they were doing it, I might be able to pass the State Troopers. And during that time, it became real clear to me that the real problem with working at the Gaslight Club, and it was beautiful. I mean, it really was beautiful inside, and the meals were exquisite, and I learned French serving, and I served some of the nicest people, some just lovely couples. I was so well trained already that it wasn't difficult for me to move into a position that was that high on the scale of service quality. But the feeling of the place was to be a speakeasy. And that's why there were so many nudes on the walls and everything was decorated in the 1920s. And so we were expected to lean way over when we served people and that sort of thing, and make sure that our bodies were obviously attractive. And what that led to was what was hard for me, because we had to go into this other room and dress and get our makeup on. And when we'd go in there, so often somebody would say, well, you certainly had a full weekend, didn't you? Or a full Tuesday, or whatever it was. And what he was saying was that you were overweight. And there was so much of that. And it was the first time in my life that I'd really been faced with that sort of thing, because in my other jobs, I was always a team player. I was always the kind that would purposely help with other tables and clearing other tables and getting coffee or a drink for somebody if the other waitress was busy. I was a team player. That's the way I worked. So the idea that here I was in this really nice place, but there was so much catty talk, and the girls were not friendly and particularly nice to each other. There was always a feeling of a competition to be something else, or to be thinner or taller or prettier or whatever it was, and get bigger tips and whatever. And it really bothered me. I wanted a real job. I wanted a job where I had respect and dignity. And so when I heard that the Illinois State Troopers were going to finally test women, I was really excited. I thought, oh man, this is going to be something else. I mean, really, the opportunity to be a female state trooper was breaking the glass ceiling. I mean, it really was incredible. So I did a lot. I did 500 sit-ups and push-ups and jumping jacks, and I did everything I could do to make myself as ready for that as possible. When I went into the test, the idea was they would give us different things to do. We had to do all kinds of physical things, but we also had to take color blindness tests and aptitude tests and personality tests, and it was a day of just checking us out. I mean, really checking us out like none of us had been checked out before. And there were a lot of us. And this was just in the Chicago area. They were checking out the entire state, the state of Illinois. So I don't know how many women were tested, but I know there were a lot. And at one point we had to jump up and down 1,500 times. Just so many different things. That color blindness test, I thought that was funny, and I asked him about it, and the man said, oh, well, it's not usually a problem for women. More men are colorblind, which is something I didn't know. But it was grueling. It was really a grueling day. I suppose we had water, but I don't remember us having anything else, but just a really grueling time to get through what they were putting us through. At the time, I was a mother of two and felt confident that I would love the job. I really did. I felt really confident I would love the job, because what they had said was they realized that in general, a state trooper is a traffic cop, and that they had been aware for some time that there were lots of traffic accidents where one or more people in a family were killed or harmed or injured or something where there was real trauma. And they felt like if they had women to be officers, there would be more of a sense of empathy and understanding and patience and kindness and saying the right thing at the right time, because if there were children and women hurt, of course the men would be, or if someone lost a spouse and so forth. So they really felt strongly that having the awareness of what a minister would have would be such a good idea. And I was all for that. I just thought, boy, I would be so good at that. So I was really excited about having this opportunity. So I did. I had the opportunity. I was able to test out and wait. And I waited and waited and waited. Finally, the letter came. It said, "Congratulations. You are one of 7 women in the state of Illinois who have passed the state troopers exam." Unfortunately, we did not expect that to happen. We didn't expect any women to be able to pass the exam. Therefore, we don't have dormitories. We don't have any kind of program set up to train you. And it went on and on and on, apologizing. Well, I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated because I had put my gaslight job at risk to apply for the state trooper job. And I was extremely upset that, and they said they had no child care programs. They had nothing planned for women to come in. And of course I had 2 children. And I wasn't sure what kind of a program they had in mind, and because they didn't tell us, but they just said that it was sad, but we really didn't have anything. And I can't explain how disappointed I was, because I really thought this would be my field. And the sad thing about it is that nowadays, I mean, the best I've ever done in teaching with a master's degree was $35,000 a year, and now I understand that the state troopers are making $65,000. I could have much easier taken care of my family and done something that I think I would have felt like I was really making a difference. I certainly know that I could handle working with a partner who was male. That wouldn't be a problem with me at all. I'd always worked with men for a lot of my life. So I just really felt cheated. I felt like I'd been led into a promise for something better than what I had been facing in life, not having had college, that I'd get a chance, and maybe they'd pay for my college too, or whatever. I just really felt like I had a good chance of being a part of that program. And I'd always been a tomboy anyway, and always enjoyed the military type life, and that was very, very close to military. And we used wearing a uniform and being on the right side of the law just really, really has always appealed to me. Truth is so important to me. And I was devastated. I was really devastated. So I ended up, because they kept complaining about my weight at the Gaslight Club, I ended up working at the the London House. I had worked at the Urbana Lincoln before I worked at the Gaslight Club, and then I worked at the London House, which was a dinner theater. It was just beautiful. It was, the setting was beautiful. The tables were gorgeous. Again, the maitre d' was just a sweetheart. And this time, it was so different because my fellow employees were like the people I'd worked with at the Urbana Lincoln. They were kind. They were helpful. We worked as a team. We did things together, and I finally figured out that probably a lot of the women felt threatened because they weren't there to make a living. They were there because they'd hoped they would attract a wealthy man as a husband. And so how you looked and whether you were thin enough was really important as far as snagging a man. And I wasn't, that's not where I was. So I realized that you've got to look at that before you go into a job. You really have to find out what's truly going on and what you're expected to do and who's expected to work where, when, and what, and for how long. And I feel like still today I missed a big chance because I think I would have been so good. I ended up, after that, I worked at the London House, and then I became a minister not long after that, because the whole idea of comforting people and in a situation like that just really appealed to me. I've always had a lot of empathy, but as I've aged and as I've looked back on my own dysfunctional childhood, I've realized that a lot of other people have, kids don't come with a book of instructions. And so a lot of people end up having children without having the support they need from a mother or grandmother or aunt or even grandfather, somebody to come along and explain how a child should be raised. And since that wasn't there, I felt like I had missed an incredible opportunity to have a better work-life balance, to work shifts where the kids would know when I'd be home and when I could be a part of their lives, and have a decent amount of money for raising them, and decent health insurance and all that sort of thing. And all the things that people are looking for now. The whole Maslow hierarchy of needs is so obvious: shelter, food, water, air, health insurance, health care. That's what all of us are looking for. And I really felt like I had the chance, but it wasn't going to be at the Gaslight Club, and it certainly wasn't going to be at the state troopers, because they let me down. They really let me down. They said we didn't have a program, we didn't have things to sign, we didn't have any dorms, we didn't have any childcare. Golly, when I look at it now, it sounds like the same thing as the Iran war. They went ahead with the war and didn't plan how to get the Americans out, or other people who lived other places, and they didn't plan on how they were going to either change the regime or turn it over to whatever. They didn't have any plans. And that was the same thing with the Illinois State Troopers. They just didn't have any plans. And I can feel today what people must have felt like who were living there, and then suddenly there was a war, because they were in the same boat. They had no way of preparing and no plans for evacuation. So the gist of the story is, have your dreams and goals clear in your mind, and find out as much as you can about who you're really putting your hopes on and for what, and finding out if there's another option. I did pass the forest park, but they wouldn't take a woman. So it was breaking a glass ceiling, but it didn't happen. I did break some glass ceilings later, but the point is that there are just so many different rocks on the path. And you just have to be able to either step over them, put them aside, or go ahead and fall. And I wasn't about to fall. So I kept trying, and I kept trying, and I kept trying, because if there's anything I learned from my father, he left me a poem called Never Quit. So I didn't. And it took a long time, but I did. And I've come to a life that I absolutely adore. If anybody has a question, put it down in the bottom. And while you're down there, please check out our nonprofit, because we've been running it for 34 years. And we have a lot of examples of the kind of work we've done. We've also got examples of paintings and fiber art that have to do with protecting our earth. They're just reminders. So if you're interested in that, take a look at that too. Thank you so much.